Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is Tuesday, March 4th. Free agency and legal tampering draws ever nearer. By far the weirdest name for the start of any free agency and weirdest philosophy, but it somehow works. The NFL free agency, it's just perfect. Just tamper a little, because of course they tamper even before the legal tampering period even begins, Denny. But I like the way it spreads the signings out over a couple of days, and we've got two new players that will be signing as free agents. Maybe the first one in Sam Darnold with his former team, the Vikings, but Sam Darnold is going to reach unrestricted free agency. Davante Adams was released to unrestricted free agency on Tuesday. Two big names that we suspected would be out there will now be out there for sure. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the report that the Giants are, quote, likely to trade up for the number one overall pick. Very strong language.
It is strong.
For a move like that. Like, we'll probably do it, you know.
Whatever. Like,
exactly, like they can do it anytime they want to. Like,
yeah.
you can just easily trade for the number one pick whenever you want to.
Yeah. Who do you want? You want Tyrod?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Steelers are apparently pitting their two sons against each other, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and they will only pick one.
Yeah.
And it appears they're leaning toward Justin Fields. Some other news that we might have some time to get to. Then we have an article from Denny on surprising target commanders from 2024. Some pretty interesting names. Some guys that are going to be really heavily debated in fantasy football this summer. One of them, Jauan Jennings, who was already going to be debated. Then Deebo Samuel got traded. Brandon Ayuk, of course, rehabbing. So Jauan Jennings, maybe some Marvin Mims, maybe a few other guys, Denny. But before we talk football, I have to ask you, how are you enjoying the first like fake start of spring? The meteorological, I can't ever say that word, spring. It begins on March 1st. It got warm here like 2 out of the past 7 days, but we're now like in our second or third like winter's revenge here in St. Louis. Yeah. And how are you doing in the early days of spring? Do you have any surely you don't have any horrible spring takes to uncork on our audience, do you?
Beyond spring being the worst season.
Well, everyone knows that, actually.
Yeah, and because it's a tease in this region. Now I know you live in LA, Miami, whatever. Like you don't even notice, right? That it's spring, whatever. Well, we notice here because there are 40 to 50 degree swings in temperature every 24 hours.
You say literally every day.
You can hear I'm congested, Pat, and I'm trying. I would like to tell the listeners that I'm congested because I don't deal with these enormous temperature swings very well. And we had one the other day. Our producer Adam knows this well. We went from me hitting golf balls in the backyard at 65 degrees to the coldest
day. My backyard, you of course mean the course that is in your backyard.
To the coldest day in the history of the state of Maryland the next day. So I hate spring, and we're not looking forward to it.
Spring is truly, truly the worst. By the way, winter at least commits to something. Summer, self-explanatory. Fall is really just kind of a fake summer at this point.
Right.
At least in the mid-continent, like Denny and I are, fall, a.k.a. this extended summer.
Yeah, it's just hot. It's just still hot.
82 degrees in Missouri until December 12th now. We love our fake fall. Spring, it's just, it's nice one day, but then the days where it's nice, like the ground is saturated because it rained 2 inches the day before. But by the way, sure you at least like the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C., right, Denny?
I like to see pictures of them. I think they are nice. Now, I've been to the cherry blossoms maybe a dozen times in my life. I've lived in the DC area my whole life. And every single time I've been, it's been under 40 degrees. The wind has been between 30 and 50 miles an hour consistently, and it has been sideways raining. And that to me is the prototypical cherry blossom experience, the most miserable weather possible. And also, even if you think it's a nice day in DC, it's not, because you're going to leave your house at noon to go see the cherry blossoms, and by the time you get there at 1:15, the temperature has dropped and it's raining.
Well, either that or the really dark secret of like the mid-continental weather that they have in Missouri and Maryland, that anytime there's a supposedly nice day, oh man, it's finally up to 74 degrees. They don't tell you that, and it's 70% humidity somehow.
Yeah, right.
And it's not even actually nice.
You're going to have to pay for it somehow.
Yeah, you are going to have to pay for it. About the cherry blossoms, I was always wondering why those special Nats uniforms, their cherry blossom uniforms.
I don't like those.
Why they had sheets of rain on them. Now I know. Now I know. Now we know, Denny, Davante Adams, we know his status for free agency in 2025. He will not be on the New York Jets. He was officially cut loose on Tuesday. They put on a brave face of attempting to make a trade. Always seemed like a really unlikely outcome for a variety of reasons. Now he's on the open market. He's near the top of it. It's a typically like a free agent group at wideout where like there's a few guys who could help your team, but like you have to squint, and like the really good guys just never reach the open market. T. Higgins, of course, franchise tagged. Basically, you only get there if you're like Davante Adams, or you're aging, or you're like Chris Godwin, where you're coming off injury. But Davante Adams can still really help a team, probably.
Yeah.
I'm going to lead you into this. Where I feel like there's 3 potential outcomes for Davante Adams, where he goes ring chasing, understandably. So I don't say that pejoratively, with an elite team like the Bills or Chiefs, 2 teams that really, really need help at wideout, particularly Kansas City. He takes top dollar, nothing wrong with that. His career is winding down. He goes to a desperate team like the Patriots or the Panthers, or he does a homecoming team where he goes somewhere like Green Bay, or frankly, this has been a take too gross for me to even post so far. But what team does Derek Carr play for?
Right.
He plays for
going to Saints.
And just what's your initial lean on which of these 3 avenues Davante Adams might pursue?
That is a gross one. But he was really upset when the Raiders got rid of Derek Carr. So
Yes.
That's why he went to the Raiders. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. Well, I mean, just to review last year, he had a couple blow-up games with Rodgers in the second half of the season. His yards per route run was slightly over his career average, which was a little bit surprising. Not great, but he wasn't terribly inefficient, I would say. And also you have to consider the state of the team and the quarterback position. So I think he has a lot left in the tank. 32 years old.
I mean, a lot. No, that seems like kind of a strong phrase, but he has something left in the tank. Hopefully, maybe a lot. I guess I
think he has a decent amount, and maybe not a lot. And
or they can skip the next 2 gas station exits. Is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
keep coasting down the highway.
A little bit of a Kramer situation where you're just pushing it to see how far it'll go. For fantasy, I think he can land in a number of spots and be pretty good. I mean, even with the Bryce Asants in Carolina, I feel like he could actually do some things there as a guy who would be targeted 10 and 12 times a game. I know you're grimacing.
The Bryce Asants would not be my first choice.
You're trying not to throw up. No, I'm saying it would not be my first choice either. But honestly, it would be better than Green Bay.
I don't know about that. I
hate that Packers offense.
I think my top 2 outcomes are 1, the Chiefs. Like, come on, man. Like, just do it. Like, take the paycheck.
Yeah.
Chase the ring. I honestly think I know the Chiefs have gotten so far from their pyrotechnic offense, and I know they have kind of some supposed target commanders and Rashee Rice and even Xavier Worthy down the stretch last year. But I mean, has there ever been an offense more crying out for like an alpha target, especially with Travis Kelce kind of on his last legs?
Yeah.
Like, I think it could be like the classic 170 target season where he could almost replace Travis Kelce, where it's kind of like it feels like a bit of a scam in fantasy because it's a bunch of short area targets. He averages like a really, really low YPC for receiver. Like he averages like 11.2 yards per catch or something.
Right.
You don't mind because the check is cash clearing all the same. But I would love the Chiefs. I would love the Packers, to be honest. I think they're in the same. I think the Packers are like, I keep talking about the phenomenon of teams getting tired of backfield committees. Like, screw it. Just sign Saquon Barkley so we don't have to take our running back off the field for all the most important downs. I could see the Packers being at that point with the receiver core, like, listen, maybe one of you is going to break out at some point. We don't care anymore. We want Davante. We want someone to lead this committee. Those would be my first 2 choices, Denny, Kansas City and Green Bay.
I mean, Josh Jacobs is with you. Josh Jacobs went on a press tour around the Super Bowl and said, we need a receiver. And Dontayvion Wicks was really mad about that.
He was
online. And I can't blame him. Just real quick on Adams, his yards after the catch per reception was actually at a career high last year, which is something I meant to mention off the top. But I think it shows you that he does have some juice left. And another thing we're going to have to be kind of cognizant of is how a team wants to use or plans to use Davante Adams, because last year he had a career high mark for slot rate. Okay. 48% of his slots of his routes came from the slot with the Jets. That was well above his career mark of 23%. I think that works at later in a guy's career, like Larry Fitzgerald, and how he was used. So we are going to need the team, whoever goes, with Davante Adams for next year, needs to use him in that way. That'll be critical.
If you could plant Davante Adams on one team, What is the choice you're making, Denny? One of the 5 or 6 I mentioned, or is it the dreaded option 7?
I'd put him on the Saints.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa, time out. What?
I'm serious. I'm dead serious. You put him with Derek Carr. This guy's not throwing to anybody else. I'm talking about for fantasy. I don't care about the Saints. I'm just saying.
You don't care about human dignity?
It'll be. Not to be dramatic. No, I mean you're talking about like 200 targets are in the range of outcomes in New Orleans.
I think the one bugaboo, I think he would more seriously consider it, but you want to talk about salary cap hell. The New Orleans Saints are in it. They have a truly acute need where they were kind of like almost like a mini Packers where they had like 4 or 5 guys that were pseudo commanding targets. Now they're all hurt. Like their top 2 receivers, high upside guys in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, but coming off pretty concerning injuries. The Saints would be a great fit, but salary cap for a target commanding perspective, I should say, but salary cap hell probably precludes that, Denny.
Yeah, I would say Kansas City as a landing spot would be good, but I feel like him and Rashid Rice would eat into each other's roles.
I was going to say, would the Chiefs be a careful what you wish for?
Yeah. Because neither of those guys profile as an outstanding boundary receiver. Rice made all of his hay from the slot last year.
I feel like Davante could maybe revert to that, where he could Patrick Mahomes hasn't been throwing it. Maybe the only reason Pat Mahomes isn't throwing into tight windows because he doesn't trust anyone right now, and he would have immense faith, I'm assuming, in Davante. I do worry about the Rashid Rice factor and how many targets he was commanding, but that was kind of out of desperation for the Chiefs, and now he's coming off a really concerning injury. Davante Adams, as long as his release is not backdated, like he's been informed of his release, he could sign today. He does not have to wait till the open market begins, so we could have a new home for Davante Adams very, very quickly. Denny, Sam Darnold cannot sign until the legal tampering period begins. Unless it's with the Vikings, he can resign with Minnesota at any time. There is some chatter that he could be back in Minnesota even after they elected not to place the franchise tag on their 2024 quarterback. But you know how these kind of things go. Like once you reach the open market, there's someone who's always going to offer more money than the team that let them go. There's so many quarterback desperate teams here. The Athletics, Alec Lewis has reported that his 2 likeliest landing spots are believed to be the Raiders or the Giants. The Giants, I don't even remember the last time a team's had this much quarterback thirst, this much quarterback desperation. Yeah. What is the state of the Sam Darnold? Do you think there's any chance he returns to Minnesota? Where do you think he ends up? Where do we want him to end up? Things of that nature.
I want him to end up in Minnesota. I mean, I think that's
next.
I think that's the best for everybody.
Don't need to see that again.
Kevin O'Connell, and I talked to you about this quote a couple times now, but Kevin O'Connell had an interesting quote, and I read strongly into it, and it was this.
You read so powerfully into
this. Some would tell me to stop reading into it so much, but he said this: there are teams who consider Sam a starter in this league. And to me, that says, gotcha. I tricked him, and he got the most out of Sam Darnold that anybody could ever get. And they got to the first round of the playoffs and got blown out. So I feel like wherever he lands, if it's outside of Minnesota, it is destined to be a total disaster.
Well, the disaster potential is very high anywhere, of course, with a guy like Sam Darnold. But I think that is why they're moving on, is because he got the most out of him. And he saw in that Week 18 game and in the wild card game that it was either plateaued as hard as anything was ever going to plateau, or it was just going to keep regressing, that he'd been figured out. And kind of like when anyone from these McVay or Shanahan trees, like they fully max out a quarterback, and then when they determine there's no other level to take, they move on. And I really think that is what happened with Minnesota. So where even if they didn't have faith in J.J. McCarthy, or say J.J. McCarthy is secretly like not as far along in his rehab, I just don't think – I don't think they want to bring him back. And I think if they did bring back Sam Darnold, it would not be the same offense we saw last year. They're talking about wanting to have more of a committee backfield this season, for kind of understandably so, after they put so much on Aaron Jones's plate last year. But I think it would be like, all right, we tried slinging Sam, even though they did try to limit his attempts last year for a while too. I think there'd be an even more concerted effort to limit Sam Darnold's attempts in Minnesota. And I think it's kind of is on to plan B, even though it could be a huge disaster. And it's like, whatever, let someone else take a crack at the Sam Darnold conundrum. The Vikings, I feel like they've already done their bit and are moving on, Denny.
I mean, Darnold, top 10 in completion rate over expected, top 10 in dropback success rate. I don't think he sniffs that in any other offense, honestly.
Well, unless, of course, it's part of the family. As we know, like the Shanny McVay trees are like kind of like a wide, sprawling mafia network. Like, well, what if he goes to Toledo?
Well, I could see Darnold bouncing between franchises run by the Shanahan Mafia from here on out.
No, I mean, I feel like even Sam probably understands. Like, okay, yeah, don't sign outside. The Shanahan Mafia is option A. McVay Mafia option B. Because he spent 2 years in finishing. He went to Shanny finishing school in 2023. Then he went to McVay finishing school in 2024. I don't hate the Raiders one because okay, the Sam Darnold bounce back. Kind of people have hashtag forgotten. People forget hashtag. I think that's the joke I was looking to make there. The Darnold Sans actually started in the most unlikely of places. And it was in Carolina, I guess 2022, or the year where they went like nuclear run heavy the second half of the season. And that's when he first started tricking the computers. And that's what he parlayed into a Shanny experience, which he then parlayed into his Kevin O'Connell starting experience. So I think if Sam Darnold like kind of like saddled up with Pete Carroll, he could be a pretty decent fit for that really traditional, like super balanced Pete Carroll offense where I think the disaster potential was so high with the Giants that it wouldn't even be worth trying. I think with the Raiders, the disaster potential will not be quite as high just because Pete Carroll would enter with no illusions. Like this is a limited quarterback. Like we want to be balanced anyway. We're not going to put too much on his plate and maybe protect him even more than Kevin O'Connell. I would not hate that fit.
I could see the Raiders being ultra run heavy too, depending on who they get in the draft. And
you couldn't see that will happen. That is happening.
I mean, they get Genty in the draft and it's over.
They're getting Genty. Let's be real.
Yeah, they are. You're right. It's over.
We're going to talk about who the Giants might be getting when we take a short break and return right after this. Scotty Scheffler headlines a loaded field this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tune to NBC and Peacock this week to find out if Scheffler can win his third crown in the last 4 years at Bay Hill.
Man,
if you want to know what happened,
that course, man.
If you want to know what happened, how I got tongue-tied in that promo, I was getting ready as soon as it ended to make a joke. Like, I like when it's a golfer's name I know I can just pronounce immediately.
Right.
And then I did such a good job pronouncing Scotty Scheffler that I proceeded to. And then the tournaments sometimes are totally crazy names. And like, I've never even seen this word in my life.
Yeah, right. Before. The Aquashore Open.
Yeah, exactly. So Scotty Scheffler and Arnold Palmer Invitational were too normal for me to read without a hiccup.
Too normie.
Denny, you know what is too normal, according to the New York Giants, is just trading up for the number 1 overall pick. You can do it easily.
Simple.
Just so easy to do. I don't know why you don't just don't do it. Of course, referencing Jordan Renan's report that the Giants are likely to trade up for them. It's like saying like I'm likely to have like 2 beers when I go out tonight. Like it's almost like calling their shot. Like, we can just do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're open. They'll take anything.
What do we think of this report? I mean, man, the quarterback desperation is just. I mean, this team, they're like casting about the desert. Like, I think I saw water over there. I've never seen anything like this, really. And we've seen a lot of quarterback desperation in our day here during our time at Rotoworld. What do we think about this? What do we think of the reports that it's probably for Cam Ward? Cam Ward totally separated from Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
Give us the lay of the land here with the New York Giants. I gave you about 5 different avenues. Where you can
I can do 22 minutes on this. Jordan Renan said if they make this move, it will be for Cam Ward. So there's no mistaking what they're trying to do here. And there's been such a distance created between Ward and Sanders that this does not come as a surprise. Now, I will say the Giants were reportedly willing to pay upwards of $50 million for Matthew Stafford for 2025.
Man, I would have loved to see it. Would have been such a disaster. I would have been posting about this like 24 hours a day.
That was never, ever going to work, right? I mean, never. The fact that, Stafford's advanced in age, he'd have to be playing outdoors in nasty weather all year, like behind a bad offensive line. No way, man. So that to me reeks of desperation, like you said, unlike anything maybe we've ever seen. So we're gonna have this team, I think, make a real run at the number 1 pick, which that's what you need if you want Cam Ward. Like the number 2 pick doesn't do you any good if you want Cam Ward. So they're gonna go in, I think, and give it a real shot. I don't know if it's actually a good move for the Titans to take that unless it's a king's ransom. But clearly the Giants are like ready and willing to go all in for a quarterback because they are desperately needing one.
I agree with basically all your takes there, where it's like true desperation for the New York Giants. But if you're going to be desperate, it might as well be trading up for the number 1 overall pick and not giving Matthew Stafford, 37 years old, $50 million. Where like if you're in save your job mode, at least make it something with upside or like any potential beyond 2025. Because the Stafford gambit, even if it worked and they go 10-7, and then maybe spring a wild card upset, like all right, like I guess that was worth $50 million because you're not running that back
right
for 2026. I agree with the aggressive posture. I'm sure it's very annoying for the Giants. Like they have the number 3 overall pick, and they're going to have to surrender so much capital to just move up even 2 spots. But
yeah,
I do agree from like, why would the Titans do this? The Titans should take Cam Ward. And Cam Ward, whatever, imperfect prospect. They almost always are. I see zero reason for the Titans to not take the Cam Ward chance. And I would be very, very concerned if I was a Titans fan and they traded down to New York Giants number 3, Denny.
Just to give you an idea of how down bad the Giants are at quarterback, their drop back EPA since the start of 2023 is 3rd worst in the league, just barely behind the Patriots and way behind, of course, the Browns. So this is a team that's just, I'm clearly just sick of it. Like we're done. Like we're gonna go. Like you want 14 first rounders? Fine, yeah, have them. we're getting our guy. We're getting a guy who can actually help us to be a viable offense.
That EPA stat you shared, by the way, was in spite of the fact I still think my favorite stat from the entire 2024 season. I can't remember if it was 6th or 7th, but it was something like in the EPA era. That start that Drew Lock had against the Colts was the 6th or 7th highest single game EPA ever posted by a quarterback.
Crazy. It was over 1. It was over 1.
I think it was like 1.14. I thought it was like astronomically high.
It's just insane. Like we will never see an out of left field performance like that again, because it's not like Drew Lock had shown something. He had shown nothing going into that.
Absolutely nothing.
Man, shout out to the Colts.
Would Cam Ward, by the way, I mean, would this be a disaster spot for the young man? Where Brian Dable, people forget, Brian Dable's like reputation was pretty much in tatters before Josh Allen just broke out, like which he very clearly was going to do anyways. Like Brian Dable was kind of a failed Belichick, Nick Saban disciple, and talk about someone who had been casting about, just had never found a situation where it seemed like he made a difference. And the 1 year of overachieving with the Giants, and then just kind of like back to pre-Josh Allen, Brian Dable, the past 2 years. And two, when you're trying to save your job, like a lot of times instead of cutting the young player loose, they keep the restrictor plate on like way too long. I fear they could be in like no turnovers mode with Cam Ward, where I don't know if you've watched Cam Ward. The young man loves turnovers mode, and the Giants would be a very questionable landing spot for me from that perspective.
It's an ugly spot. It's an ugly spot for whoever lands there. I mean, you have Malik Neighbors, and that's all, and the offensive line is so bad. Oh,
how every year the Giants are redefining terrible offensive line play? I never quite understand that.
Invest something in the line. Like, come on, man. Like, eventually you got to build something. It doesn't have to be an elite line, but it's got to be able to protect somebody at some point. And you're going to want to do it if you sell out to get Cam Ward as your savior,
Denny, we come back as we do every show for some unknown reason to Russell Wilson and also Justin Fields, Taysom Fields, as I like to call him. Or again, like the Steelers they're pitting the brother against brother, like a sibling against sibling. They want to duke it out for their parents' love here for some unknown reason between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. I would have to imagine there's no way that whoever they bring back is the unquestioned starter. And apparently the report is they're leaning towards Justin Fields.
Right.
what do we think about this? And there's no way if Justin Fields like wins this battle with Russell Wilson that it is as the unquestioned starter, correct?
I don't think so. I will say, just looking at the metrics, like Russell Wilson was far more accurate as a passer last year than Fields. Maybe that shouldn't come as a surprise, but Fields brought something to the table in his rushing that obviously Russell Wilson doesn't have. For fantasy purposes, Fields is real bad for George Pickens. In fact, Pickens was like barely usable for much of Justin Fields' time. And totally reliant on big plays. Whereas with Wilson, it was a little less reliant on huge plays. So that wouldn't be good. But really, like, just the way I draft fantasy teams, like I'm interested wherever Justin Fields goes. I've seen some whispers about maybe the Jets would be interested in a short-term deal. He would be reunited with Garrett Wilson. They played together at Ohio State. You would think that he could beat out Tyrod Taylor for that starting job in New York. And so he's great for fantasy no matter where he lands. And so like best ball wise or whatever, I'm paying close attention to where he goes because he's just not like that rushing upside is just not going to be baked into how people are viewing him in most formats.
I agree that Justin Fields would be totally underdrafted, even despite his past fantasy success, because Steelers fans, the reason Justin Fields would be undervalued in fantasy is because it would be, you want to talk about people who'd be over it, would be Steelers fans with just ultimately not a serious quarterback move. And the Steelers, they don't have good draft position. The free agent market, of course, not great. They have kind of no good options at quarterback, but it's hard to think of a more pointless season than the Steelers really running back either of these quarterbacks to me, Denny. And it'd be kind of like, what is the point of the Steelers franchise at this point?
Yeah,
if it's either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson.
I mean, I think the point of the franchise is to win 9 or 10 games and sneak into the playoffs. I mean, that's kind of what it's come down to over the past decade.
Maybe this time it counts with the playoff victory. But if Justin Fields somehow comes away with the unquestioned starting job, just throw your computer in the trash. EPA does not matter. Like completion percentage over expected does not matter. He would begin the year at least as like a top 7 or 8 quarterback.
I think so.
Like that might honestly be being conservative.
I was more excited to draft Justin Fields last summer than I was any other player because
that says more about you than anything else.
But. It does. But you would get 12th round, 13th round because the Steelers were like, well, we love Russell Wilson, and I'm like, whatever, man. Like that doesn't matter. Eventually, Justin Fields going to get a shot. Of course, he was benched for no reason, but that it worked for a little while.
I still feel like I know I'm beating a dead horse here. I want Justin Fields to be Taysom Hill 2.0, actually good Taysom Hill, as many are calling him, like so badly. More than I want any starting opportunity for Justin Fields. I want him to be the next scam tight end is what I really want.
Well, I can tell you that nobody is going to sign up for that role except for if it means that they can stay in the NFL.
That is true, actually, because boy, do you take some hits.
And you do. And it's also, I mean, any quarterback, that came up as a quarterback, entered the league as a quarterback, it's the ultimate humiliation to be demoted to tight end.
Well, no, even the Taysom, but he could do the Taysom role as an actual quarterback. Imagine a Taysom role where Taysom actually is allowed to throw.
Or can throw.
Or true. More like Taysom, no offense to our guy. Worst deep ball I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, he throws like a tight end.
He does throw like a tight end.
And
he does throw like a tight end. Justin Fields would throw like a quarterback. That's why he'd be so good. Real quick, we talk about this guy all the time. The Seahawks, though, Geno Smith, second straight year of regression after his surprise career year in 2022. Seems like he's going to be back as starter. But Seattle's talking about they want to select a quarterback this year, but we won't force a pick. Where it basically seems like they're telegraphing Geno's probably still the starter, but we understand we need to move on from this era. We need to start thinking bigger. Any fantasy takeaways from this? Because it's not like we're drafting Geno Smith next year, but does this mean bad things maybe for our receivers? What do you have to say about this?
I wrote about this quite a bit near the end of the season, but, Geno Smith and the Seattle offense ran really cold. And I know for a hater like yourself, you're going to say, well, that's because he's Geno Smith. But I mean, just regression wise, like it got kind of ridiculous with them and the Niners, the Seahawks and the Niners, ridiculous regression candidates all year. It never hit really. So maybe they're able to get that back on the right track for this coming year. I will say Geno Smith's job seems very safe. So, from a fantasy
Well,
standpoint,
I would argue this quote
uh,
hints that it's not quite as safe as we think.
it would take a lot to dislodge him.
Whenever a team starts openly talking about the future, that kind of means the
Well,
present.
he's 33 years old or whatever, or 34 years old. Like, what are they going to pretend like this guy is like their future? Of course not.
Well,
He's
that's what teams do. They always do pretend until it's time to stop pretending.
Right. That's true. That's true. I mean, he's the longest bridge quarterback of all time. It's a bridge quarterback who's there for 5 years.
He's the Golden Gate Bridge quarterback.
Yeah, right. It's just you just keep driving. I actually think that I think that he is good for DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba more than anybody else would be who would come into that offense. And I know the computer lies all the time, but the computer still says Geno's pretty good.
Yeah, the computer is dead wrong there. But yeah, Geno Smith, Denny, no one can appreciate this joke other than me. He is the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway Bridge quarterback. The Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, of course, the longest bridge in the continental United States.
Wow, that is a book reading stat there.
Denny, do you know? I won't try to embarrass you in geography. Never mind.
You know what? Tell me.
No, I was gonna say, do you know where Lake Pontchartrain is?
It's in Illinois.
Well, I'll give you a big hint. You and I were just together in this city.
Oh! It's in New Orleans. Okay.
Yeah. So that's not some like huge fact that you needed to know. But I wanted to make the joke. We were just together, and we may have crossed it. You don't remember crossing
it? we walked across it.
You don't remember when we spent 4 hours walking across the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway? I do remember when we took a short break, and we come right back after this. Watch the biggest names in sports talk, including Mike Florio, Dan Patrick, Kyle Dvorchak, Dan Lebitard, and Matthew Berry, as they cover the biggest moments on and off the field each weekday on the NBC Sports Now channel. It is available on Peacock and free on most streaming platforms. Learn more at NBCSports.com/now. And now we move on from the news to Denny's surprising Target Commanders article. A lot of interesting names. I was really into this article because it's all guys we're going to be talking about all summer. So your surprising Target Commanders happen to thankfully align with like the news, like our fantasy news makers. So first off, I mean, I basically just explained the article, but maybe explain the article a little bit.
Yeah.
And then segue into the first name we're going to be talking about, a man by the name of Jauan in San Francisco.
Right. So at the end of every season, part of my wrap up process is to see which receivers and tight ends. I'm going to have a tight end article in the same vein in a couple weeks here, but is to look at targets per route run, because I think it gives us a pretty reliable window with a large enough sample into which guys did a good job of consistently commanding targets from their various quarterbacks. And it doesn't, this metric, targets per route run, doesn't cover everything because for instance, with Josh Downs, who's the cover guy for this article, things changed a lot between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. And I mentioned that in the piece, but it gives you a nice idea of guys who this guy gets open, this guy commands targets. So Jauan Jennings, who I think you remember this. I know Kyle does. I was so skeptical of Jauan Jennings all September and October. And I kept saying, nah, it's not happening, because nothing in this guy's history said he was a reliable target commander. Well, he really did do the commanding of the targets last year in San Francisco against, for instance, against zone coverage, 29% target per route run. That was the 6th highest in the NFL. Now I know that Brandon Ayuk was out the whole year. I know Deebo Samuel is struggling with injuries, struggling with breathing problems at one point, maybe not super into the team at other points. But Deebo's gone to Washington. Ayuk's coming off this catastrophic knee injury. I think Jauan Jennings could just slip back into this role of a number one target for now.
I absolutely do. And I wanted to be out on Jauan Jennings kind of from the get-go last year, but then from the get-go, he was commanding targets, unlike anything we had ever seen from a player in his position. Like a guy who had been a total afterthought, number 3 receiver, probably didn't have an ADP last summer in fantasy leagues too. Like, wow, Jauan Jennings had a 12 target game. And
yeah,
the only thing that has me a little worried is one of my Shanny axioms. Like the second, like Kyle Shanahan pays someone, or the second, like someone like elevates a level, like he seems like he gets annoyed and upset with them. And I almost wondered if some of like the target commanding was like passive aggression from Shanny. Like I wonder if it's the Shanny I can make anyone a star principle. And I got a little sense of that with Jauan. I mean, this is of course not an actual take.
I think that happens with quarterbacks.
Yeah, I thought it was happening a little with receivers. Like, oh, like Brandon Ayuk thinks he's so good, makes us pay him. Well, guess what? I can make Jauan Jennings just as good. And it seemed like a lot of it was almost like residual, like resentment of Brandon Ayuk. I'm dead serious, like resenting Brandon Ayuk and his contract.
That's actually not a bad theory.
Because Brandon Ayuk, of course, never backed down and got paid. And this didn't ever seem like they were on the same page together last year, Shanny and Ayuk. But I don't know. He loves the grinders. He loves the small things players.
Yeah.
I don't think a rug pull is coming with Jauan Jennings. Even if like Ricky Pearsall ascends, I do think Jauan Jennings probably starts the season as a fantasy wide receiver 3, and maybe one who can even be a wide receiver 2, Denny.
And I think you can probably draft him as a wide receiver 4, depending on how you approach the draft. Jauan Jennings, one of the best blocking receivers in the NFL. We know that Shanahan values that a lot.
Is that good or bad, do you think?
It's good. It means he stays on the field, which, even before he was a fantasy thing, he was on the field a lot in that offense because he just blew people up in the run game.
If I were Kyle Shanahan, maybe I would have determined that Jauan Jennings was good before everyone got hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make you think.
Before he used a first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall last year. Talk about a guy who I feel like we fought never-ending ADP battles over this player, and now they're somewhat justified because he's actually done something. To end the year, Marvin Mims was a big-time playmaker for the Denver Broncos. He was never particularly close to an every snap player, Denny, but I take it, seeing as he's in your article, when he was on the field, especially late in the year, he was commanding targets. What is the state of the Marvin Mims?
Now, I will say a lot of designed looks from Marvin Mims, but that, as you know, Pat, tends to happen with players who make plays, and like coaches don't force the ball into the hands of someone who can't do stuff after the catch. And as we saw last year with Marvin Mims's short area ability and his long speed, he blew people away with those designed touches. Now, you look from week 10 to week 18, I mentioned this in the piece, only Puka Nacua, who, by the way, had outrageous target commanding numbers last year, but only from week 10 to week 18, only Nacua had a higher targets per route run than Mims. Mims over that stretch led the entire NFL in yards after the catch. He strikes me as a super efficient guy who will become less efficient slightly if he gets more playing time in 2025. But honestly, we need more playing time because I'm not sure he can keep this up at this pace for a whole other season.
I mean, are we just hoping he becomes like a Rashid Shaheed, which is also a role that's like barely even defined because Rashid Shaheed himself has never really truly stayed on the field and we know like mega like volume spike probably isn't coming, but he does seem like someone who just really needs to be on the field. And what is the ultimate ceiling with Marvin Mims? Like, did this guy ever ascend beyond like frustrating wide receiver 3 status? Could he actually be like a wide receiver 2 in fantasy football?
He was top 10 in targets per route run against man coverage, which I think tells you that he didn't just rely on teams playing zone and finding the soft spot in the zones. Like he can beat guys in coverage. So I think that there is room for ascendance here. And I know we did a mock draft with Rotoworld folks, and I think producer Adam took Marvin Mims very late in the draft. I think it was one of the best picks in the draft. I made me very jealous. If Mims stays anywhere near that late round ADP, I think he'll be an easy pick for however you're building a team.
I feel like one thing Marvin Mims will never do is stay near a late round ADP. At least in like drafts full of like Karanes and best ball bros.
Oh, the sickos are going to be very aggressive on Mims.
They will be.
But if you're in a league with well-adjusted people in your office or your family or something, then Marvin Mims will be there for the taking.
You're right. He actually kind of does feel like a classic free money home league player.
Yeah.
Marvin Mims. Probably not the last time we'll talk about Marvin Mims. Josh Downs, another guy we know and love. Another guy where we just kind of the variable is so big with him. Who will be quarterback? Again, I was almost comparing him to Antonio Brown when it was not Anthony Richardson to quarterback for the Colts, where he felt like that kind of target commander and that kind of just like savvy over the middle of the field route runner, where it seemed like he could get open at will. So I don't know if people were necessarily surprised that he was one of these target commanders, but it was easy to forget because when Anthony Richardson was out there, he was not. So what are we telling people about Josh Downs as we wait to see what the Colts quarterback situation is actually going to be?
Well, Richardson did eventually target him heavily in his last little stint as starter. Now, the first stint,
that's
not
good
so much.
news. That's really good news.
I think eventually it just became like you got to get the ball to Josh Downs, and Downs pretty easily overtook Michael Pittman as the top option in that passing game. Although Pittman's numbers were not bad, I mentioned this in the piece. It's not like Pittman fell off the face of the earth. Like he still was pretty decent at commanding targets. The problem here with both Pittman and Downs is that if Richardson is back under center as starter in week 1 for the Colts, you're talking about a very low volume offense. You're talking about one of the maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lowest volume pass offenses. So even if Josh Downs comes away with, hey, he had a 30% target share today, what did that come to? 8 targets? You're not exactly throwing a party for that.
You're not. And I just don't know if even plan B is going to ultimately result in a lot of volume. Denny, we're working on our free agency primer article. I'm sure I got a weird premonition writing this thing.
All right.
That Russell Wilson is going to end up in Indianapolis. It just seems like too Colts not to happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where the old quarterbacks go.
What would we think of Josh Downs with someone like Russell Wilson? Like we're like, it's more volume than Anthony Richardson, but it's still not like the kind of volume that you're drafting.
Yeah. I would take Russell from a fantasy standpoint for Downs. I would take Wilson pretty easily over Richardson.
Well, I mean, come on, I would take Gardner Minshew over Richardson.
Yeah, of course. So I'd be in favor of that for Downs purposes, of course. I will say one thing about Downs that struck me in looking through the data from last year is that he really didn't command targets against man coverage. Now, if you draft Josh Downs this year, you're going to be playing him. Like there's not a question. I feel like there might be ways to just monitor, are the Colts playing a man coverage heavy team? Are they playing a zone heavy team? And to either adjust your expectations, or maybe if you're in a shallow league, think about, making some moves around Josh Downs.
I think Antonio Brown could command coverage again, targets against man coverage. So that's not a great data point there for my lofty comparison. A final player, as you say, apparently, but it might work for us with Dontayvion Wicks in 2025. You apparently are not quitting Dontayvion Wicks. Again, I'm not actually that surprised that Dontayvion Wicks quite visibly commanded targets. He then quite visibly did nothing with them.
No, he didn't.
Frequently not catching them.
So good.
What's the data? Sorry, what's the data telling you about Dontayvion Wicks?
Yeah, I put him in here for you specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, 30% targets per route run overall. That's 4th best against zone coverage. He was top 20 against man coverage. He was top 5. That's wild. Now you look at his yards per route run. His level of efficiency on those opportunities, it wasn't good. He ranked 80th out of 125 wide receivers last year in yards per route run. Christian Watson ranked 5th, by the way. Jaden Reed was 94th. He was kind of Ray McLeod area. Not sure about Jaden Reed long term. Look, all I'm saying is that
none of these guys are good. That's why they're signing Davante. But
right, if Dontayvion Wicks cannot make a boneheaded play every time the ball comes to him, he could have something cooking. That's all I'll say.
So rarely do players make that transition, but a few have. I mean, Will Fuller was kind of that kind of player. Then it did coincide.
Davante Adams
with a PED suspension, a little bit. Davante wasn't quite. Davante was like truly commanding targets. Even I think it's like his second year. He wasn't doing anything with them, but he was catching them though. It was a big difference. He was catching them. Dontayvion Wicks lets them. Dontayvion Wicks absolutely loves to let the ball hit off his face mask.
I know, and I get it, and I get that everybody is just sick of hearing about this guy. I'm not all the way out because if you look back to his college days in Virginia, he was a great target commander there.
I mean, anytime someone commands looks for the UVA Cavaliers,
You got to pay attention.
You do have to pay. I guess he did continue to do it in the NFL. So Dontayvion Wicks, clearly we're not going to close the book on this guy.
Yeah.
And we're debating him all summer. We're closing the book on the show. That's because we're out of stuff to talk about.
Yep.
We're going to have more to talk about on Thursday. And we're joined by Kyle Dvorchak. Denny and I will hopefully by then have published our free agency primer. I've told DJ Short that we will. Yeah. So we're looking.
I'm going to have to look into that powerfully.
I'm looking into it ever more powerfully as the hours tick by. So for Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. We'll get the primer to you on Thursday. We'll get the show to you on Thursday. We'll talk to you in 2 days.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.